She worked 12 years scrubbing floors in silence, then saw her face on TV, labeled missing. A billionaire offered $35 million to find the angel who saved his life, never realizing she was folding his laundry. He walked past her every single day. Now the world wants to know, why didn't he see her? And what happens when she finally speaks? Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The fog rolled in low, over the rolling vineyards of Napa Valley, blanketing the earth in soft gray, like a secret being whispered. Graham Winslow, the third, stood at the glass wall of his estate, sipping from a crystal tumbler, the bourbon untouched. His tailored suit midnight blue, the spoke fit him like armor, but even armor couldn't shield the hollowness in his chest. It had been 13 years since that night, yet the memory returned now with forceful clarity. The panic, the tremble in his body, the moment his lungs stopped obeying, and the voice, gentle, steady, singing through the darkness. A gospel hymn. That voice had pulled him back from the brain. Angela. That was all he knew. The name she whispered before slipping away. No last name. No photo. No trace. Only her voice, warm as sunlight and trembling like leaves in the wind. Now Graham, at 48, worth $7.2 billion, chairman of Winslow Pharma, was offering $35 million for her identity. Not out of guilt, he told himself. Out of gratitude. Or maybe it was guilt. After all, she'd saved his life at his lowest, when he was nobody, just a trust fund addict in a detox clinic in South San Francisco. No headlines, no guards, no layers of security. Just a collapsing man, a black woman who sat beside him, held his hand and sang him back to the world. He pressed a button on the side panel. A massive OLED screen slid down over the fireplace, displaying his press conference. "I'm not asking for anything more than the truth," his on-screen self declared. "Angela, if you're out there, help me thank you. Just once." Behind him, Monica Reeves adjusted the throw pillows on the Italian leather couch. The screen flickered on her skin, but she didn't pause. She never did. 12 years working this estate, and she'd perfected the art of invisibility. Smooth motions, eyes averted, words limited to yes sir or shall I start on the upstairs rooms. Monica was 43, tall and lean with skin the color of dark coffee, and eyes that held storms. Her uniform was standard gray slacks, white blouse, soft-soled shoes. Her name tag had been removed years ago, at the request of Mrs. Winslow, who thought it distracted from the aesthetic. She watched the screen out of the corner of her eye. His voice hadn't changed, maybe rougher now, with age, but it was still that same clipped confidence. He didn't recognize her then. He didn't now. He never had. The first time she stepped into this house, he hadn't even looked up from his newspaper. He nodded vaguely, assuming, she suspected, that she'd just transferred in from some agency. She hadn't. She'd taken the job after losing everything. Her nursing license, her apartment, her reputation, after a whistleblowing incident at the detox center. The same one where she'd met him. She'd reported that black patients were being sedated more aggressively, discharged faster, and given fewer follow-ups than white patients. And for that truth she was let go quietly, with a mutual agreement, and a black mark on her record. Cleaning became the only work that wouldn't ask too many questions. Now here she was, 12 years deep in his mansion, washing his dishes, folding his laundry, and emptying the trash cans in the same office where he now coordinated a nationwide manhunt for a woman who sang to him in the dark. He was looking everywhere, except at the people closest to him. Graham's estate was a marvel of excess. 26 rooms, each designed by a different European interior specialist. A private chef, who trained under Michelin stars. Security gates that scanned retinas. The vineyard was only for show. He didn't even drink wine. He liked the image. Legacy, he called it. To Monica, it was a palace built on distance. No one touched each other. No one really saw each other. She moved down the hallway, pushing the cleaning cart slowly. The marble beneath her shoes gleamed. She'd polished it that morning before the sun was even up. Graham had walked across it an hour ago, without looking down. He never did. People like him never looked down. In the control room, tucked behind the wine cellar, Graham's private investigator, Winston Hale, adjusted his glasses. He'd been running facial recognition programs against old clinic logs, leaked videos and staff files from the detox center. Nothing had turned up. Angela hadn't been on payroll. There was no visitor log. But something was bothering him. A patient report dated 13 years ago contained an incident summary filed by a nurse's aide who went by initials MR. She'd been let go 1 week later. The note was vague but mentioned Graham's overdose, the unauthorized presence of a staff member in a restricted area, and a complaint about racial disparities in treatment. Winston stared at the initials again. MR. Sir, he called out, stepping into the main hall. Graham didn't turn around. He was watching the same clip for the 20th time. Grainy security footage from that night. A figure seated next to his bed. The outline of a black woman. No face, just presence. I think I found something. Or someone, Winston said. Graham finally turned. His eyes were rimmed with red from too little sleep and too much remembering. Another fake Angela? No, Winston replied. I don't think so. He handed over the file. This staffer was terminated days after your overdose. No photo. No ID. Just initials. MR. Graham flipped the page, distracted. So, Winston hesitated. Sir, there's a Monica Reeves on your estate payroll. House staff. Employed here for over a decade. Graham frowned. Monica.
The maid.
A silence fell between them. Then Graham shook his head. Come on. That's absurd. Is it? Winston asked quietly. Maybe she was never gone. Maybe she didn't want to be found. Graham opened his mouth to argue, but then something shifted in his expression. He looked toward the hallway. Monica had just passed. Her steps were soft, steady, familiar. The bourbon in his glass trembled as he set it down. Behind him, the screen played the hymn again, the same one the mystery woman had sung on that night. Low, tender, saving. And in the hallway, Monica hummed to herself, barely audible. The same melody, unchanged by time. Graham stood frozen. Then slowly, he reached for the intercom. Winston, he said, voice tight. Bring me a voice sample of Monica Reeves. Now. The walls of Horizon West Detox Center were never designed to hold dignity. Pale blue paint peeled beneath fluorescent lighting. The smell of ammonia and institutional despair clung to every surface. Monica Reeves, then 30 years old, and in her second year as a nurse assistant, had learned to walk those halls with quiet resolve. She was good at her job. Steady hands, calm under pressure, sharp memory. But more importantly, she saw her patients, all of them, even the ones the system didn't. It was just past 1:00 a.m. on a Thursday when the call came through the hallway intercom. Code blue in room 21. Monica had just finished wrapping gauze around a diabetic patient's swollen foot when she heard the panic in the nurse's voice. She dropped the chart, sprinted across the hall and slammed open the door. Inside, a young man convulsed on the bed, his body arching, eyes glassy. The IV bag had ruptured, and vomit slicked the floor. 2 orderlies stood frozen, and the night nurse Susan, a pale, nervous woman, fumbled with a sedative. But they weren't fast enough. He was slipping. Back up, Monica barked. He's seizing. No one moved, so she did it herself. She dropped to her knees, cradled his head, tilted his chin, cleared his airway. His heart raced beneath his ribs, like a trapped bird. His breath wheezed. His hands reached for nothing. Monica recognized the signs. Respiratory depression from an opioid cocktail. Not just a relapse, a miscalculation. Where's the Narcan? She demanded. Silence. He's not a junkie. He's a patient. Get me the damn Narcan. When no one moved, she acted without it. She grabbed his wrist, pressed her thumb to his pulse, and leaned close. And then, without even thinking, she began to sing. A gospel hymn her grandmother used to sing when storms raged through their Louisiana porch. Soft, steady, soulful. Lord, keep me day by day, in a pure and perfect way. She sang not because she thought it would save him, but because it was the only thing left in the room that carried truth. I want to live. I want to live. In a building not made by hand. The man stopped convulsing. His eyes fluttered. For a flicker of a moment, he focused. Her hand was still on his chest. Her voice, unwavering. That was the first time she saw Graham Winslow III, and that was the last time he ever saw her. Because 2 days later, Monica was called into the office of the center's director. The conversation was stiff, legal-sounding, wrapped in HR language. We appreciate your commitment. This is a restructuring. There's no fault here. But Monica knew better. The truth had come out. After the overdose incident, she had submitted a written complaint, not just about Graham's botched treatment, but about how other black patients were being monitored less frequently, documented with suspicion, sedated more often than their white counterparts. It wasn't the first complaint she'd made, but this one involved the son of a powerful billionaire, and this time she wouldn't get a warning. She'd get wiped clean from the record. The last thing they told her was that her employment agreement forbade direct contact with patients outside of clinical procedures. Singing, they said, was unprofessional. So they erased her. No job, no recommendation, no unemployment support, just a black mark on her license that made it impossible to return to the field. It wasn't immediate. The descent, it was slow erosion. Her apartment lease ran out. The interviews stopped. Her nursing certification expired. Soon, Monica was on a Greyhound heading north, clutching a duffel bag and her grandmother's locket, applying for any job that didn't ask too many questions. She was hired by a staffing agency as a house cleaner. They told her she'd be assigned to a property in Napa. Big place. Good pay. No live-in required. The owner, they warned, was private, sometimes moody. She didn't learn his name until she saw the mail on the kitchen counter. Graham Winslow. And there he was, alive, successful, still untouched by the night that broke her. He didn't recognize her. Of course he didn't.
That first day, Monica mopped the marble hallway while Graham sat on a phone call about a cancer drug that would redefine the market. She paused just a moment too long when he walked past, and he didn't even glance her way.
She thought of the way his hand had gripped hers, how his lips had murmured Angela in the haze of sedation. Angela wasn't her name. She had whispered it to calm him. Her late aunt's name, the woman who raised her after her mother passed. It was the name she thought might bring him peace in a time of pain. Now it was the only piece of her he remembered. Years passed. She became part of the background, furniture, fabric, smell, a uniform without a name tag. His wife never looked her in the eye. The staff called her Maid Monica, like it was a brand. She endured microaggressions, locked doors, condescending comments, misplaced blame. She never spoke about the night she saved him. Not once. What was there to say? To speak would be to unravel everything she'd rebuilt. Her stability, her protection, her invisibility. And for black women, silence was often the only shield the world allowed. Until this week. Now news cameras were parked outside the gates. TV anchors called the woman, Angela, a mystery hero. Headlines buzzed with curiosity. Graham offered $35 million for anyone who could lead him to her. Monica tried to stay off the news, but curiosity cracked the dam. She sat one evening with her son Jalen, a brilliant 19-year-old engineering student home from school, and watched the press conference play on mute. Graham's eyes, haunted and earnest, filled the screen. "I remember her voice more than her face," he said. "She saved my life. She sang to me. I don't know why she left, but I know I owe her everything." Jalen looked at his mother, puzzled. "Didn't you work at a detox place back then?" Monica didn't answer. She stood and went to the kitchen. Her hands trembled as she opened the dishwasher. The plates rattled. She hadn't heard Graham's voice in that way since that night. Not with humility. Not with need. And in that moment, something in her cracked open. It wasn't just the memory. It was the injustice of it. The irony. The shame. She had scrubbed his bathtubs, polished his trophies, and emptied his trash while he searched for a woman who had never left. She was already here. That night, as she folded linens in the guest wing, Monica heard voices echoing from the library. Graham was on a call. "No luck yet," he said. "Every voice has been a dead end." One woman from Atlanta got close, but she couldn't sing the melody. There was a pause. Monica leaned closer to the door. "I know I sound crazy," Graham said, "but I'll know her voice when I hear it. It's burned into me." Monica dropped the towel she was folding. Her breath caught. She hadn't sung that hymn in years. Not since her grandmother's funeral. But the sound, the one he remembered, it lived inside her still. She pressed her back against the wall, heart thudding. She didn't notice the shadow behind her until it moved. Jalen stood at the end of the hallway, holding his phone, having heard everything. "Mom," he whispered. "That woman he's looking for, it's you, isn't it?" The morning sun spilled through the glass walls of the Winslow estate, illuminating its sleek white surfaces and curated elegance. On every screen, television, tablet, phone, the face of Graham Winslow III appeared, poised yet visibly shaken, delivering the same message with rehearsed sincerity. "I'm offering $35 million, he told the camera, his voice dipping into a tone meant to sound heartfelt, for the real Angela to come forward. She saved my life, and I never got to thank her. If you're watching, please help me make it right." The campaign had become a media obsession. It wasn't just a story now. It was a spectacle. Find Angela trended globally. News anchors speculated about the mystery woman with practiced awe, while tabloids printed side-by-sides of every black woman remotely connected to Graham's life. Old co-workers, flight attendants, even a woman who once sat next to him on a first-class flight, all claimed to be her. The most viral video, a slowed-down enhanced security tape of the shadowy figure who had entered his detox room 13 years ago. And Monica Reeves watched it in silence. She sat on the edge of her modest twin bed, inside the small guest quarters tucked behind the laundry room. The screen flickered with the grainy black and white footage. A nurse's aide, tall, lean, her hair wrapped in a patterned scarf, her hands touching Graham's shoulder gently, then cradling his face. It was her. She knew it. The angle was poor, but her gait, her posture, it was unmistakable. The scarf she'd worn was her grandmother's. Her fingers shook as she pressed pause. In the still frame, her face was just out of view, but the locket on her chest glinted in the security camera's night vision. No one else would know, but she knew. 12 years working under this man, polishing the wood panels in his office, dusting the very awards he'd later hold during press conferences, and not once had he looked closely enough to see her. Monica felt her stomach turn as the memory crashed back. Graham calling her Marie once by mistake. Another time the help, she'd corrected him softly. He'd waved her off like a fly. She remembered standing quietly behind him at holiday events, while donors toasted to community impact and inclusion. She remembered hearing him once joke about diversity hires with his CFO, unaware she was within earshot. The sting hadn't left her, not because he was cruel. He wasn't. He just didn't see her as someone worth knowing. She had polished his grandfather's portrait, steamed his luxury suits, picked up his broken champagne glass from the night he found out his divorce was final, and he'd never asked her a single personal question. The woman he now honored with press conferences and millions, he wouldn't have even held the door for her last week. The irony made her chest ache. She moved to the full-length mirror by the closet. Her reflection was composed, the same as always, simple blouse, hair pinned up, face neutral. Monica had learned long ago that black women in rich white spaces had to master restraint. No sudden movements, no visible emotion, just quiet, competent invisibility. But now the world was watching. The world wanted Angela, not Monica. Angela, the heroic, mysterious, perfectly constructed black woman who existed only in Graham's mind. And yet, Monica was her. Still, she didn't move, didn't step forward. Because stepping forward meant putting her past, her son, her dignity, on display. And even now, she didn't trust what the world would do with the truth. The mansion buzzed with staff chatter. Since the campaign launch, producers and journalists had begun calling the estate directly. Graham had a PR firm, filtering emails, voice messages, even AI-enhanced audio from hopeful claimants. Monica listened to their voices sometimes during dinner cleanup. Women faking a southern accent, humming gospel songs like it was a game show audition. The staff laughed behind closed doors. One of the chefs had even mocked the hymn Monica once sang, clapping off beat in jest. "It's wild how desperate people are," said Ava, the house manager, during one of their brief hallway exchanges. "Can you imagine pretending to be that woman just for the money?" Monica offered a small smile but said nothing. She had learned not to speak when people assumed she wasn't listening. She remembered the microaggressions layered in years like sediment, times when Ava talked over her in meetings, assuming she couldn't contribute. The gardener once asked her if she spoke good English. Even the Winslow's daughter had once asked Monica if she was born in the ghetto. These weren't brutal wounds. They were paper cuts. Constant, quiet, and somehow more painful for their subtlety. And now, suddenly, the same people treated Angela like a mythic angel. Blackness, once ignored in her presence, was now romanticized in her absence. The contrast made Monica want to scream. That evening, after loading the last of the dinner dishes into the industrial dishwasher, Monica returned to her room and locked the door. Her hands moved on instinct. She reached beneath the bed and pulled out a worn cardboard box, the edges soft from years of movement. She hadn't opened it in over a decade. Inside there were relics of a life that once felt possible. Her nursing badge from Horizon West, the laminate cracked but intact. A folded letter of dismissal. Cold, legal, final. A photo of her and her aunt. Angela standing in front of a church on Easter Sunday, arms wrapped tight around each other. And at the very bottom, resting inside a silk pouch, was the locket. Oval, bronze, engraved with a tree of life. The clasp was loose now, but inside was still the tiny photo, her aunt on one side, Monica on the other. It was the same locket she wore the night she saved Graham Winslow. The same one that glinted in the security footage. She closed her eyes, letting the memory flood her. His body shaking, her voice trembling but sure, the way his breath caught as her voice washed over him. It wasn't just a song. It was the only thing she could offer in a world that refused to hear her. And now that same world was holding its breath, waiting to listen. Monica held the locket tightly in her palm. She could end this. End the speculation. Claim her name, her story, the justice that had been denied her. But what would it cost her? What would it mean to stand before the cameras, not as a savior, but as a maid? Would they still see her the same way once they knew who she really was? Or would they do what they always did to women like her? Strip away her narrative, flatten her into a symbol, then discard her again. Her fingers trembled as she opened the locket, staring at her younger self. The woman who believed that helping someone would be enough. From outside the thin wall of her room, she heard Graham's voice drift through the hallway, low, reflective, speaking to a guest. I'll never forget that voice. She sang like she'd seen heaven. And in that moment, Monica knew. He still had no idea. But someone else in the house was listening. And they did. America watched. And gossiped. The $35 million reward became the cultural event of the season. Headlines splashed Graham Winslow III's desperate plea across news feeds. Claimants appeared on daytime talk shows, their stories more dramatic by the minute. A concierge in Chicago who hummed a tune she claimed Angela taught her. A flight attendant who said she once comforted a famous guy in first class. A choir director from Kansas who insisted she knew the melody by heart. Cameras rolled as women, predominantly white, presented themselves as the voice he couldn't forget. Monica Reeves watched it all unfold in the dim light of her small room. She sat motionless, staring at the television, where yet another woman, lighting styled like she was the hero, claimed she just always had a connection to the sound of that hymn. Each claim diluted the truth. Each performance erased a black woman's quiet humanity. On every broadcast, in every montage, Angela became a myth. Someone public, celebrated, desirable, while Monica, the real Angela, remained invisible. Outside her walls, the Winslow mansion pulsed with activity. Journalists had started camping at the on-site security gate, hoping for a glimpse of someone who resembled the footage. Staff whispered excitedly in the hallways. Ava, the house manager, joked with some interns. He's looking for his maid in all the wrong places. It wasn't malicious, just another microaggression, another reminder that the maid's place was to serve, not be seen. At her side, Jalen had been relentless. He pressed her. Mom, you should go forward. He pointed to the screen. That's you. But Monica, ever cautious, knows the path of truth for black women is littered with dangers. Doxing, character assassination, erased backstories. She'd read the threads. She'd watched the virtual mobs tear down black women who dared to speak. And she knew that unveiling herself wouldn't erase the racism that made her invisible. It might entrench it. Yet as she watched, something unexpected happened. A familiar voice on television spoke not at her, but about her. A political commentator, a black woman herself, raised a piercing question. Why do we default to trusting the claims of strangers when the truth might be rooted in our own invisibility? Would the story be different if Angela had been visible all along? Monica's breath caught. That voice, steady, discerning, echoed words she'd lived silently for years. That acknowledgement, voiced by someone she didn't know, felt like a mirror holding her pain. It made her realize how deeply her invisibility had been normalized. Suddenly, in the news feed, a familiar face flickered. The old staffing log from Horizon West Detox. Scanned and shared. Lines of text, dates, initials, MR terminated, after the incident. Then below that, Monica Reeves, current Winslow estate staff, 12 years. Her pulse thundered. Meanwhile, in the estate's inner offices, another drama was quietly unfolding. At his desk, Winston Hale, Graham's lead investigator, leaned forward, eyes narrow, He stared at two documents side by side, one from the detox center, another from the estate. Neither had photos, but both described a woman attentive, calm, with a hymn-humming voice. Winston had spent the last days combing through staff employment files from the early 2010s. Most were generic. Then this one, Monica Reeves, hired months after the incident. Underpaid, unnoticed. A cleaning staffer, not a nurse, with no relation to clinic records, but with the initials M. Winston reached out to the house manager. "Does she ever hum to herself?" he asked. "Does she ever sing?" Ava shrugged. "If it's 6 a.m. and she's alone, maybe. She's quiet, walks soft." He ran the audio of Monica's humming in the hallways, through voice recognition software. The result pinged, high probability match to the archived clinic recording. Winston exhaled. Across the hallway, Monica held the locket tight in both hands. She felt the silence in the house tighten around her. The home, her place of invisibility, might become her unveiling. Her world had always been about blending in, keeping small, surviving. Now he was closing in. In the living room, Graham stared out the window. His hope had cracked open. He didn't know the edges yet, but somewhere amidst the chaos, Angela was close. Too close not to be noticed. Late that night, Winston knocked on Monica's room door. "We need to talk," he whispered through the wood, and at that moment, Monica realized. She'd always been here, but now, only she could decide whether to be found. Monica didn't open the door. Winston's voice had disappeared, and the hallway was quiet now. Her hand still hovered near the knob, trembling not from fear of confrontation, but from the weight of choice. The kind of choice black women like her weren't supposed to make. The kind where $35 million was on the table, and all she had to do was say her name. But Monica Reeves had already paid for speaking once, and the cost was still echoing. She returned to the bed slowly, her back aching more from memory than age. The locket sat open on the nightstand. It had been 13 years since she wore it openly, since she'd allowed herself to remember who she used to be. Back then, she wasn't afraid to speak up. Back then, she thought honesty mattered. The memory was sharp, her voice trembling but resolute as she told her supervisor that black patients were being chemically restrained more than their white counterparts, that they were discharged earlier, documented differently, touched less. She had written a report, brought receipts, spoken truth in a place that preferred silence. And within a week, she was gone. "Reorganization," they said. "Policy violation," they whispered. The theft accusation came later, baseless, never proven, but just credible enough to sink her chances at ever getting another nursing position. She was labeled a problem, a liability with dark skin, and a voice too loud for comfort. So she stopped speaking and started cleaning. Monica sat in the dark now, the glow of her phone screen lighting up a text from Jalen. "Jalen, you okay? He knocked on your door?" She didn't reply. Not yet. Her son was the only reason she hadn't fled this place years ago. The moment she'd held him, 8 pounds and fighting from day one, she'd known silence wasn't surrender, it was armor. Every floor she mopped, every racist slight she swallowed, every humiliation she wore like skin, she endured for him, to keep him fed, educated, free. Jalen was everything Monica had been told she could never produce. Gifted, articulate, fierce. He had built his first prototype for a low-cost insulin reader in community college, with duct tape and borrowed lab time. His work had been published online, but ignored by every major tech fund, not because it lacked merit, but because it came from someone without pedigree, without connections, without the right zip code, or complexion. She'd seen the shifts in his face each time an investor passed him over in favor of a white peer with less to show. She saw what it did to him. And now he watched her flinch at recognition, watched his mother, the woman who had survived more than she ever confessed, refuse to claim what was hers. "Why won't you just say it?" he asked that morning, voice low, eyes pleading. 35 million, Mom, that changes everything. We could disappear, build what we want, own what we deserve." Monica didn't look at him when she answered. "And then what?" Jalen frowned. "What do you mean, then what?" "Then I become a symbol," she said. "Then I stop being Monica. I become a headline, a hashtag, a discussion point, a black woman with a lucky voice." "You're already a story," he said. "Just no one knows it's true." But that was the problem. Truth didn't protect women like her. It exposed them. The world didn't care that she saved a man's life. It cared that he remembered, and once they found out who she really was, not a university professor, not a famous activist, not a glowing stereotype of black womanhood, but a maid with a broken past and a nursing license long expired, they'd tear her down to build him up. They always did. She remembered watching the news when a black woman won a workplace lawsuit against a tech giant, only to have her home address leaked, her past relationships scrutinized, her parenting questioned. She remembered the viral Twitter thread that mocked a black TSA agent for speaking too proper. She remembered the principal who was fired after reporting racist bullying, the nurse who was doxxed after a patient complained about attitude, the single mother dragged through the media for accepting a scholarship, and Monica remembered herself, trying to hold the pieces of her life together, after one decision, telling the truth cost her everything. The system didn't forgive. It consumed. So she stayed quiet. She moved like a shadow through the Winslow estate that week. Her shoulders more tense, her ears more alert. Every time she passed Graham's office, every time the hymn replayed on TV, she felt her body stiffen, like a wire pulled taut. But Jalen, he moved differently. He watched her closely. Then one night, as Monica finally allowed herself a moment of sleep, Jalen sat alone at her tiny desk. The locket lay open beside her phone. The photo inside was faded, but unmistakable. Her face, so young, hopeful. He reached for his own phone. He didn't know exactly why he did it. Only that something in him couldn't let the silence win. Jalen uploaded the photo to a private server. Then he attached a scanned version of her old nursing badge. No name. No direct identifiers. Just enough to say this woman might be the one. The message was short and anonymous. Angela may have been beside him all along. He hovered over the send button for 5 full minutes. His thumb trembled. Then, finally, he hit send. He closed the tab, deleted the history, sat back in the chair. And in the room behind him, Monica stirred in her sleep, murmuring the start of the same hymn that had once saved a man who never remembered her name. The next morning, Graham's office line rang at exactly 7. Winston picked up. A filtered voice said, "You're looking in the wrong places." Then an image file arrived. Grainy. Scanned. Graham froze. "It's her," he whispered. But he still didn't know. She was only one hallway away. The sound lab was built into the east wing of the Winslow estate. A sterile glass box outfitted with noise-dampening panels, and equipment more suited for a military intelligence unit than a billionaire's private campaign. Graham stood in the center, arms crossed, jaw set with a tension that hadn't loosened in days. Winston Hale, his lead investigator, adjusted dials, and scanned a long list of voice samples, logged into the recognition database. "You sure about this?" Graham asked, his voice low, gravelly. Winston didn't look up. Every woman who applied was asked to hum, or sing any version of the hymn. The algorithm scans for vocal tone, cadence, and tremor resonance. "We're not looking for performance. We're looking for match. And it works. Better than memory." Graham let out a bitter chuckle. "Memory failed me. Voice didn't." The system had processed 6112 submissions. Of those, 94 were eliminated for poor quality. 276 were labeled low compatibility. The remaining 2042 were grouped by confidence level, some 50%, some 70%. The highest hovering around 89%. Graham had already listened to every single one. Until this morning. At 7:03 a.m., a new file had been uploaded by a secure untraceable sender. Attached was an audio clip titled simply, "Sunday Service, Church Basement." Winston played the clip. The voice, raw, low, familiar as heartbeat, filled the lab. "Lord, keep me day by day, in a pure and perfect way." It wasn't polished. There was background noise. A cough. Someone shifting in a pew. But none of it mattered. The warmth. The gravity. The pull. It was her. The system pulsed. "Match probability." Winston turned to Graham. "This is the closest match we've seen." Graham didn't speak. His eyes stayed locked on the waveform dancing on the screen. Something in his chest cracked open. She was real. Closer than ever. The search wasn't chasing a shadow anymore. "Find out who submitted it," he ordered. "We can't," Winston replied. "They stripped the metadata. No trace." "Someone knows her," Graham said. "They're protecting her." Meanwhile, back in her quarters, Monica sat frozen over a letter she hadn't expected to receive. A thin, crisped envelope, with the return address of Horizon West Medical Center. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a formal notice. It was a quiet bomb waiting to detonate. Inside was a simple message. Dear Monica Reeves, we are contacting you regarding a DNA confirmation conducted as part of a retrospective analysis involving a blood donation during a critical care emergency dated June 9. You are the confirmed nurse's aide involved in the care of Graham Winslow III. The hospital, without her consent, had apparently run the match after receiving a subpoena from Graham's legal team. The clinic had kept the donation on file. Back then, Monica had offered blood when Graham began to crash, and no immediate cross-match was available. They never told her it had been kept. Now the silence was gone. There it was. Cold clinical proof. She was Angela. She had always been. She thought she might feel vindicated. But all she felt was exposed. Her name printed, her actions quantified, her silence shattered. Jalen returned home, that evening, unaware of the envelope, unaware of the email Winston had been trying to trace. He was humming to himself that same gospel melody. Monica sat him down, handed him the letter. You sent it, didn't you? She asked. Jalen froze. I didn't say your name. I didn't say anything. You sent my voice, she said softly. From church. Jalen nodded. They needed to hear you. I wasn't ready, she replied. He looked down, ashamed. I thought it would bring you peace. Monica's eyes welled. Peace doesn't come from being recognized. Sometimes it comes from being left alone. There was a long pause between them. Finally, Jalen said. They were never going to stop looking. And he was right. Later that night, Monica folded the letter and tucked it into her Bible. She didn't sleep. Across the estate, Winston pulled up a list of possible matches based on the voice recording. While no name had been attached, the system's AI feature cross-referencing background ambient noise flagged a subtle acoustic fingerprint. The sound had been recorded in a church basement with drywall seams. 2 clicks of a metal walker, someone coughed, followed by a whispered Monica. Winston's eyes widened. He played the clip again, paused, amplified. There it was. Monica, sing it louder. He dialed into the estate's employee database, clicked on Monica Reeves' profile. No photo, just 12 years of work history. Low salary, no prior employer listed. He cross-checked the locket image from the anonymous email. The nurse's aide in the old file. The initials MR. It all lined up. Winston picked up his phone and called Graham. We found her. Who is she? Graham asked, standing in his office window staring out at the vineyards. Her name's Monica Reeves. She's already here. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, schedule a meeting. Don't tell her I know yet. I want to see her, face to face. I need to be sure. Winston hesitated. Sir, what if she doesn't want to be found? I have to try, Graham said. After all this, I have to look her in the eyes. He hung up. Outside, the fog rolled in again, pressing against the glass like a secret waiting to speak. The next morning, Monica received a message via Ava, the house manager. Mr. Winslow wants to meet with you privately. 11 a.m. in the red study. No reason given. No details. Just a time and a room. Monica said nothing as she folded her apron. Her hands shook slightly. She nodded politely and walked away. But inside her mind raced. Did they know? Had the locket betrayed her? Had Jalen's clip drawn blood? She changed her blouse, straightened her back, and prepared to walk into a room she had cleaned for 12 years, as someone they had never seen. At exactly 11 Azarine a.m., Monica opened the heavy mahogany door to the red study. Graham looked up from his chair and blinked. No flicker of recognition, just confusion. Can I help you? He asked, like she was a stranger. And Monica understood. He still didn't know. The red study was silent but alert, like a theater just before the curtain rose. Thick velvet drapes muffled the late morning light, casting long shadows across the room's mahogany paneling and shelves of untouched books. A low fire crackled, more decorative than functional, its warmth purely symbolic. Graham Winslow III sat behind a curved antique desk, his tailored suit crisp, posture poised like a man preparing for a verdict. He didn't know she was already in the building. Had always been. This meeting, he believed, was with one of the final 5 candidates, women narrowed down by Winston's data analysts, selected for their vocal match, geography and loosely verified histories near Horizon West, 13 years prior. All had been summoned discreetly. No press, no cameras, just private, quiet meetings. Graham wanted one thing: recognition. That unspeakable confirmation you feel not with your mind, but your body. the kind that bypasses logic and crashes directly into the soul. Monica stood outside the double doors, her hands clenched around her skirt. Her name had not been requested for this meeting. Ava had simply said, "Mr. Winslow will see you now." That's how staff were spoken to. No explanation, no courtesy, just instructions. Monica had lived 12 years behind that glass wall of deference. Now she was about to walk through it. The door opened with a soft creak. Graham looked up and didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't register a single change in expression. His eyes scanned her the way he might scan a spreadsheet, efficiently, distantly, without substance. Monica stepped inside. Her back was straight, her face composed, her hands folded loosely in front of her. "You must be." Graham paused, flipping a folder on his desk. "Monica, is it?" She nodded once. "Yes, sir." He gestured to the armchair opposite him. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." She obeyed, gracefully lowering herself into the chair she had dusted every Tuesday for the last decade. "I appreciate your discretion," he continued, voice clipped but polite. "As you might imagine, this process has been emotionally complex." Monica studied him. This was the man whose vomit she had cleaned off a detox floor, whose breath she had fought to keep steady, who once clutched her hand like it was the last lifeline on earth, and now looked at her as if she were a stranger selling insurance. He leaned forward slightly. "So where are you from originally?" It was a question she had heard hundreds of times in her life, always when her blackness felt inconvenient to the questioner's comfort. It wasn't about geography. It was about identity, about difference, about reminding her she was not quite from here. She met his gaze evenly. "Alabama, but I've lived here most of my adult life." He nodded, as if that tidied something away in his mind. "You worked at Horizon West?" "I did." "You were present the night of my incident?" "I was." "Do you recall anything specific about that night?" There it was again, that night. The one he carried like a broken compass, pointing nowhere, always spinning. "I remember a young man who was terrified," Monica said softly, "and a room full of people too afraid to move." Graham tilted his head. Something flickered behind his eyes, but it vanished quickly. "I was told you submitted a voice sample." "I did not," Monica replied calmly. Graham blinked. "You didn't?" "No, sir. Someone else must have." For a beat the air in the room shifted. Monica could feel him re-evaluating her, running some internal calculation between possibility and disbelief. Still, he didn't see her. She looked down at her hands, remembering how they had pressed against his ribs, checking breath, grounding him. The same hands now folded in silence, scrubbed and aged by years of labor he never noticed. He asked one more question, casual but cutting. "Do you remember her name?" "The nurse aide that night." Monica's jaw tensed. "She didn't give her name," she said. "Maybe she was protecting something, or hiding something," Graham offered. There it was. Even now, even in this room of supposed reckoning, the assumption lingered. If a black woman didn't announce herself, she must have had something to hide. Not dignity, not trauma, not consequence. Just guilt. Monica didn't respond. The silence grew heavy. Graham leaned back, slightly disappointed. "I've spoken to several women, all very emotional, but none of them felt like her." "And what did she feel like?" Monica asked. Graham sat up. "Calm," he said after a moment. "Like everything slowed down when she walked in. I don't remember her face. I barely remember her touch. But I remember her voice. I remember the way she sang." He looked toward the fire, eyes distant. "That song, it brought me back." Monica studied the man across from her. His features were the same, sharper now, hardened by wealth, and grief, and power. But the boy she once pulled back from death, he was buried under layers of privilege so thick he couldn't see through them. So she inhaled, and began to sing. No warning, no announcement, just sound. "Lord, keep me day by day." Graham turned sharply. The words hit him like a pulse of memory. "In a pure and perfect way." His breath caught. His hands trembled slightly. "I want to live. I want to live." He stood, in a building not made by hand. His mouth parted. His eyes, suddenly wet. The voice. That voice. That voice. Not from YouTube. Not from 1,000 recordings. Not from the fevered recollection of dreams. But here, now, in this room. His knees nearly buckled. "You," he whispered, staring at her like she'd just stepped out of the grave. But before Monica could respond, the door burst open, and in walked one of the other final 5 women, escorted by Winston. "There's been a mistake," she announced. "You're not going to believe this." And Monica realized her moment might be slipping away again. The room was spinning. Graham's hand gripped the back of the chair as Monica's voice hung in the air, delicate but unshakable. The last note of the hymn dissolved like mist, but its echo stayed lodged deep in his chest. He stared at her, stunned, not because she had sung but because something irreversible had just happened. He remembered. Not just the sound, not just the melody. The moment.
The desperation.
His own hand clutching a stranger's wrist, her scent faint lavender and laundry starch. The soft murmur of the hymn brushing against the sterile air as death crept toward him. And now here she was, alive, calm, steady, exactly as she had been. "You," he said, slowly. "It was you. You're her." Monica didn't move. She didn't smile. She didn't confirm it. She let the silence name her. Winston and the other woman at the door, an eager, clearly embarrassed woman, who had realized she'd walked into something sacred, stood frozen. Graham raised a hand to dismiss them. The woman left quickly. Winston, ever the observer, hesitated before backing out and quietly closing the door. Now it was just them. Graham sank back into his chair, hands in his lap, head tilted back like he'd just been struck. How?" he muttered. "You've been here, this whole time, for years." 12, Monica said evenly. He looked at her again, like her face had just changed shapes. "I never knew. You didn't say anything." "You never asked," she said. That hit him. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but found nothing useful. No words strong enough to soften what had already been carved in stone. "I must have walked past you 100 times. 1,000, Monica corrected. His face flushed. "But I didn't recognize you. Because you never looked." Graham stood abruptly and began pacing in front of the fireplace, one hand to his mouth, the other fisting and releasing by his side. "I can't believe it. I can't believe I was so blind." Monica stayed seated, posture steady, watching him unravel. She didn't pity him. She knew this collapse wasn't about her. Not really. It was about his ego being torn from the inside out, forced to confront that the person he'd romanticized, chased, poured millions into finding, had been beside him all along, and had been invisible to him. He stopped, turned to her. "I need to make this right." "You can't," she said softly. "But I can try," he said, voice almost pleading. 35 million. It's yours. I meant it. No strings. I owe you my life." She shook her head. "You don't owe me your life. You owe it to yourself to learn how to see people." He faltered. "Take the money," he said again, his voice tightening. "Please." "No. I'm not trying to buy you." "Yes," she interrupted. "You are. You want to pay your way out of discomfort. You want to wrap this story up with a bow. I save you. You reward me. We both get to feel good." She stood then, gently, her tone even but sharp as a blade. "But I don't need your reward. I needed a fair world back then. I needed my job, my license, my dignity. I needed a system that didn't turn its back when I spoke the truth." Graham looked at her, breath shallow. "I didn't know." "You didn't care to," she said. "You remembered the voice, not the face, not the woman, just the sound that soothed you." He turned, avoiding her gaze. The fire cracked behind him. "This is a lot," he muttered. "Because I'm not what you imagined?" she asked. "No. I mean yes. I don't know. I thought you were—" "What?" Monica asked. "A saint? A dream? A woman who existed only to comfort you?" He didn't answer. Monica stepped closer. Not in anger, but in clarity. "You built a narrative where you were the lost boy, and she was the angel who pulled you back. And now you're standing in front of the woman who scrubbed your floors while you called her the help, and you don't know what to do with that." His face twisted, stung by the truth. "Monica, I didn't mean—" "I know," she said. "You never mean to. That's the point." He stood helpless. "Please, just take it. Take the money. Let me do something." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she said the words that gutted him. "You already did something. You made me invisible." He blinked. His hand dropped to his side, as if he'd been disarmed. Monica stepped back, calm and deliberate. "This isn't about a reward," she said. "It's about recognition, and that can't be bought." He reached out once, just slightly, as if to stop her. She didn't flinch. She turned, walked to the door, and paused. "You were never looking for me," she said. "You were looking for a version of me that didn't make you uncomfortable." She opened the door and walked out. No envelope, no applause, no closure. Just the quiet power of a woman reclaiming her truth. Behind her, Graham collapsed into the chair, speechless. Winston entered a moment later, holding a folder. "You might want to see this," he said, placing it on the desk. Graham opened it. Inside was a newspaper clipping, dated 13 years ago. Headline: Nurse's aide fired after whistleblower complaint at detox center. Below it, Monica's photo. And scribbled at the bottom in faded pen, "She was right." The leak hit the internet like a match dropped in a dry forest. It started with a single post. An anonymous whistleblower, possibly someone from inside the Winslow estate, uploading a photo of Monica Reeves clipped next to the now iconic grainy security footage of the woman known as Angela. Beneath the photos were 6 words that instantly went viral. The woman he searched for cleaned his floors. Within hours, it was everywhere. By noon, Monica Reeves and Real Angela were trending across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and news aggregators. Black Twitter moved swiftly, not just celebrating the reveal, but dissecting every uncomfortable implication that came with it. The search for Angela had become more than a story, it was a cultural mirror, and now that mirror reflected a hard truth. The woman Graham Winslow III had spent $35 million searching for wasn't missing. She was unseen. By evening, the mainstream media had latched on. CNN ran a banner, "Billionaire's savior was his maid." MSNBC framed it differently: "The cost of invisibility, black women and erased labor." Fox News spun it into chaos. "Identity hoax. Winslow's search ends in controversy." The firestorm was not about whether Monica had saved him. That part was proven. Voice print match, DNA confirmation, hospital records, all airtight. The firestorm was about something far less simple. Something harder to package. How could he not know? How could Graham Winslow live with a woman under his roof for over a decade, pass her in the halls, hear her hum the same hymn, and never stop long enough to see her? The debates raged on. Academics appeared on panel discussions, breaking down the sociology of selective visibility. Podcasters unpacked the weight of historical erasure, how black women could nurture, build, save, lead, and still be overlooked, even by those closest to them. Dr. Tanya Bell, a sociologist from Howard University, summed it up in one sentence that reverberated across platforms. "The real story isn't that he found her, it's that he never saw her to begin with." Monica watched it unfold from the back corner of her modest kitchen, seated at a small wooden table she'd sanded herself. The old locket lay in front of her, closed now. Its contents had been absorbed by a nation. She wasn't watching with excitement, or pride, or even anger. She was watching with the cautious detachment of someone who had been burned before. Her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from numbers she didn't recognize, some praising her, some offering interviews, podcasts, even movie rights. A few, darker and unnamed, told her to remember her place, that she was a liar, that she only wanted a payday. She hadn't taken a cent. But the truth didn't matter online. Jalen sat across from her, jaw clenched. "You shouldn't be reading any of this," he said. "I'm not," she lied. The messages that hurt the most weren't the hate. She was used to that. What dug deeper were the assumptions. Those who claimed she was finally getting her due. Those who called her an inspiration, without knowing anything about the nights she cried into her pillow, the jobs she lost, the shame she swallowed. Inspiration, she thought, was just a sanitized word for used. Meanwhile, Graham Winslow was drowning. He had tried to stay silent. His PR team told him it would blow over if he didn't engage. But the damage was done, not to his fortune, not to his estate, but to his legacy. Every late-night host dragged him. Comedians mocked the absurdity of spending $35 million to find a woman who folded his laundry for a decade. TikTok creators reenacted skits of billionaires squinting past their maids while searching for Angela. A particularly scathing post from a black nurse went viral. Imagine watching a man offer millions to find a black woman, while erasing the one scrubbing his sinks. We've always been here. They just never look down. At a shareholders meeting, one investor asked Graham directly, "Why didn't you ever talk to your staff?" He had no answer. Despite the backlash, there were glimmers of something else, something rawer, more honest. Monica's quiet resistance became symbolic. Not in a way she asked for, but in a way that resonated. Activist circles held her up as a model of silent dignity. Op-eds praised her refusal to accept Graham's money. For some, it was a rejection of transactional justice. But for Monica, it was survival. Late one night, as Monica sat rereading the old hospital letter, her name now tied to official documents, Jalen came into the room, holding an envelope. "A producer sent this over," he said, laying it on the table. "It's real." She opened it slowly. A letter from Keisha Bryant, senior journalist at the Culture Desk, a national show known for deep-dive features on race, labor, and systemic inequality. "Dear Monica, we believe your story is more than a headline. It's a window into what America refuses to see. We'd be honored to help you tell it in your voice. Live on your terms. No fluff. No filters. Please consider joining us for a national televised interview. Our audience, and the world, needs to hear from you." There was a direct number, a handwritten note at the bottom. "You don't owe anyone your truth. But if you choose to share it, we'll protect it with everything we have. Keisha." Monica stared at the page. Her fingers trembled slightly. Jalen leaned forward. "You don't have to do it, Mom. I know. But if you do, maybe people will stop guessing." She looked up at him. The young man she raised. The reason she stayed quiet for so long. The reason she was still standing. Her voice came slow, thoughtful. "I'm not afraid of the truth," she said. "I'm afraid of what they'll do to it." That night she sat alone by her bedroom window. The vineyard outside was dark, but the media vans still loomed like ghost ships on the edges of the estate. Inside, her phone buzzed again. One message, from an unknown number. "If you're ready to be seen, the chair is waiting." Monica picked up her phone. Her thumb hovered over the dial, and just before she could decide, a knock echoed through her door. Not the usual soft tap, but firm. Intentional. She stood, heart racing, and opened it, to find Graham's ex-wife standing there. "I think we need to talk," she said. Across the studio, producers whispered in headsets and shuffled papers, prepping for the segment. The host, Keisha Bryant, approached with a kind but professional air. Her presence was warm, but not invasive. She offered Monica her hand, not out of courtesy, but out of solidarity. "We're live in 5, Keisha said, voice low. "You okay?" "No," Monica answered, breathing deep. "But I'm ready." The countdown started, and when the red light blinked on, Monica Reeves became visible to millions. The interview was simple by design. No flashy graphics, no ambient music. Just two black women seated on a neutral set, speaking plain truth in front of a nation trained to ignore women like them, unless they were singing, saving, or serving. Keisha opened gently. "You never asked for this spotlight. Why come forward now?" Monica took a beat. Her voice was calm but laced with something deeper, truth refined by fire. Because the silence was no longer protection. It became permission. "Permission for what?" Keisha asked. "For erasure," Monica said. "For rewriting a story I lived. For turning me into an idea, instead of a person." Monica Reeves had never sat in a makeup chair before. The lights were too bright, the air too cold, the attention too sharp. She wore a soft navy blouse. Jalen helped her pick out a shade that made her skin glow, and her presence feel grounded. A simple gold chain with her locket hung gently against her collarbone. She refused the suggestion of pearls. She wouldn't perform for the camera. She would show up as herself, or not at all. Keisha nodded. "People want to know, why didn't you speak up when Mr. Winslow began the search?" "I'd spent my whole life watching what happened to black women who speak up," Monica said, her eyes steady. "We're punished for being loud, punished for being quiet, punished for just existing in spaces we weren't invited into." She leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped. "Graham was never looking for me. He was looking for someone who made him feel saved, without forcing him to confront what it meant that he had never once looked at the black woman sweeping outside his door." Keisha paused. "What would you say to people who think you turned down the reward to make a point?" Monica smiled faintly. "I turned it down because I'm not for sale, and neither is the labor, the pain, or the life I lived that made that moment possible." She took a breath, the room around her holding silence like reverence. "You wanted to find a savior," Monica said. "But you couldn't see a servant." That line broke the internet. Within 30 minutes of airing, "See the Servant" trended on every major platform. Excerpts from the interview went viral. One TikTok creator layered her quote over historical images of black nurses, maids, and nannies. Another made a spoken word piece, ending with the line, "We held the house up, but you only saw the chandelier." Late-night shows canceled scheduled segments just to play Monica's words on loop. Educators posted lesson plans titled, "The Invisibility of Labor." The New York Times ran a headline the next morning. Monica Reeves didn't just speak. She unmasked a country. But Monica didn't return home to celebration. She returned to silence. Jalen met her at the door with a hug, but even he didn't say much. They sat in the living room that night, watching as talking heads picked her words apart, some with admiration, some with veiled resentment. "She's a hero," one anchor said. "She's bitter," another replied. "She could have changed her life overnight. Why walk away from that kind of money?" Monica muted the TV. "Because dignity doesn't come with a price tag," she said softly. Jalen looked at her. "But opportunity does." She didn't answer. The next day, a black SUV pulled into the estate's long gravel driveway. Graham Winslow stepped out alone. No security, no entourage, just a man carrying the weight of legacy and shame. He rang the bell himself. Monica opened the door, unsurprised. "I watched the interview," he said. "I figured you would." "You were honest," he said. "I was careful," she corrected. He shifted, unsure. "I didn't come to ask anything from you. I came to offer something." She raised an eyebrow. "I want to fund a scholarship," he said. "In your name. For women like you. Black women in healthcare. Full ride. Full backing. As many as we can reach." She studied him. There was sincerity in his voice, but also a flicker of something else. A need to redeem himself. A desire to rewrite his image. "And what do you want in return?" she asked. "Nothing," he said quickly. "Well, maybe permission. To say I tried to make it right." Monica nodded slowly, folding her arms. "It's a good idea," she said, "but it won't be in my name." Graham blinked. "What?" "I want it named after the women who never got their names printed," she said. "The ones who were buried in silence. The nurses fired for speaking up. The aides who were called girl into their 60s. The caretakers who never made the news. This isn't about me." He didn't speak for a moment. Then, "Okay. And it won't be yours, either," she said. He looked confused. "But I'd be funding." "You'd be donating," Monica corrected. "It will be community-run, transparent, no branding, no PR. Just a seed you plant and walk away from." He exhaled, realizing the answer wasn't negotiable. "Deal," he said finally. Monica extended her hand. And for the first time he took it not as a savior, not as a billionaire, but as a man being offered a small piece of grace. Later that night, Monica opened her email to a new message from the scholarship legal team. The subject line read, "Draft of the Invisible Hands Fund, Monica's edits attached." She smiled and closed the laptop. The next morning, Jalen walked into the kitchen, phone in hand. "You might want to see this," he said, placing it on the table. It was a headline from a small local paper. "Anonymous $5 million gift sent to rural nursing school in Alabama. Letter reads, 'This is for the ones you missed.'" Monica opened the article and saw a scanned note. No name. Just 5 words. "Because you saw me first." The boardroom at Winslow Global was a panoramic glass temple, overlooking downtown San Francisco. Tall, bright, and deceptively clean. A glossy, cherrywood table stretched 20 feet end to end, flanked by chairs filled with the firm's most powerful legal strategists, PR executives, brand directors, and high-level investors. The usual players in a company that had made billions by selling solutions, but rarely asking questions. Graham Winslow III sat at the head of the table, a man who once called every shot without consequence. But today, he wasn't leading the conversation. Monica Reeves sat directly across from him. Not as a maid, not as an employee, as a woman with leverage and the nerve to use it. "This isn't charity," Monica said calmly. "It's correction." Graham shifted uncomfortably. His tie felt tighter than usual. He hadn't expected resistance. Certainly not now. Not after offering to fund the scholarship. Not after the media storm. Not after her quiet refusal to take a dime for saving his life. He thought this gesture would be enough. "It wasn't. You said you wanted to help," Monica continued. "Then help the ones no one sees. The ones still being erased." Her voice was calm but unyielding. There was no apology in it. No compromise in her tone. Just clarity. "The fund will prioritize Black women entering healthcare," she said. "Not all students, not underserved in general, Black women. A few murmurs echoed around the table. One board member, a gray-haired man with tortoiseshell glasses, leaned forward. With respect, Miss Reeves, that kind of demographic targeting. It's not targeting, Monica interrupted. It's reparative and overdue. Another woman at the table, sleek in a Navy power suit, added, we'd be setting a precedent here. There are optics to consider. Optics? Monica raised an eyebrow. You mean backlash? Silence. Look, Graham said, attempting to steer the room. We're talking about a sizable investment. Long term. It has to be sustainable. And if we're excluding applicants based on race, we open ourselves up to what? Monica asked. To criticism. You're a billionaire who spent $35 million searching for a black woman he already employed, and never noticed. I think we're past the point of worrying about criticism. Jalen, seated beside her as her guest and silent witness, glanced at Graham. There was something almost pitiful about the man now, cornered not by cruelty, but by the limits of his own willingness. Graham sighed. You're asking me to politicize the fund. No, Monica said. I'm asking you to honor its purpose. Graham leaned back in his chair. He looked around the table. People he'd chosen. People whose silence had always matched his. Now they watched him closely, unsure of where he'd fall. I want to do the right thing, he said. But I have a responsibility to the company's future, and my shareholders. Monica nodded slowly. And I have a responsibility to the women who can't sit at this table, who will never be invited here. Women who nurse your sick mothers, raise your children, check your vitals, clean your homes, women who get called girl while wearing a name badge. If you can't fund them, specifically, then you're not helping me, you're helping your image. Graham flinched. It was true and they both knew it. She continued, her voice quieter now. This isn't about gratitude. This is about transformation. I don't need another symbolic gesture. I need structural change. The room fell into a tense contemplative silence. Even the clink of water glasses stopped. Graham looked down at his hands. Expensive cufflinks, perfect manicure, a life untouched by the invisible scaffolding that held it up. Monica's words made the room feel smaller, like he was shrinking inside it. But when he finally spoke, it was with the same caution that had shaped his entire life. I'll take it to a vote. Monica sat back. You do that. The vote was held 2 days later, behind closed doors.
11 board members,
each given a private ballot. The proposal, to designate the Winslow Anonymous Healthcare Scholarship exclusively for black women pursuing degrees in nursing, medicine, and public health, with support from historically black colleges and underfunded community programs. Only 3 voted yes. The rest feared the same ghost. The appearance of reverse discrimination. A PR backlash they couldn't manage. Lawsuits. Bad press. The potential fallout from conservative donors and major pharmaceutical partners. The board's official response was worded in neutral terms. The proposal was declined on the grounds of limited scope and potential for exclusionary impact. Winslow Global remains committed to diversity through broader access models. Monica read it once,
then folded it in half.
then threw it in the trash. Graham called her later that evening. His voice was tired, regretful, maybe even embarrassed. They rejected it, he said. No, Monica replied. You did. There was a long pause.
I wanted to help.
He said again. And I told you how, she said. Another silence. This one more final. I hope you still believe. I meant well, he said. Monica didn't answer. She didn't owe him that. That night, she and Jalen sat in the small garden behind their home, the stars faint under city haze. Jalen broke the quiet first. You knew they'd vote no. I hoped they wouldn't, she said. But you weren't surprised. No, he nodded, then added, you still made them look at it. That's all some of us get, she said. The truth. Whether or not they take it. The next morning, her inbox was flooded with messages. Not from brands, not from news outlets, from students, from janitors, from black women, across the country, who had never been given a platform but saw themselves in her stillness. One message stood out, from a woman in Detroit. A CNA who'd been fired for defending a patient from neglect. Her message read, I don't have your calm, I don't have your words, but I have your story, and now I know mine matters too. Monica closed the laptop, her chest tight with emotion. She hadn't won, but she hadn't compromised. She was no longer a symbol. She was a force. And people were finally listening. Not because she screamed, but because she endured. Just as she poured herself a cup of tea, her phone buzzed again. An anonymous wire transfer had hit the Reeves Family Community Trust. Amount $2,000. Note attached. They said no, but I still can. No name. Just the initials. J.W. Monica Reeves. Didn't cry when the Winslow board rejected her proposal. She didn't scream, or curse, or storm out of a building that had never truly welcomed her. She simply closed the laptop, stood up from her dining table, and began to write. Not a resignation letter. Not an op-ed.
A campaign.
One that didn't need corporate approval, boardroom compromise, or media validation. The page went live within 24 hours. The Reeves Fund. Because we were always qualified. Dedicated to helping Black women complete nursing, midwifery, and healthcare degrees. Without debt, without delay, and without begging. The GoFundMe description was simple, personal, and unapologetically specific. This fund is for the women who knew how to save lives long before anyone was willing to see them. For every Black nurse's aide who got passed over. Every student who dropped out because she couldn't afford one more textbook. Every healthcare worker who stayed quiet just to stay employed. We don't need permission to build our own path. We just need each other. It was Jalen who helped her design the page, choosing photos from their family album, scanning her old nursing badge, including quotes from women who had written to her since the broadcast. At the bottom, a donation button blinked in soft blue. She expected maybe a few $100s from friends and quiet supporters. Instead, she woke up the next morning to over by nightfall it was within 3 days, the number passed 500,000, and still climbing. The comments section read like a chorus. I dropped out of nursing school to care for my grandmother. This is for her. We see you now, we're behind you. For my mother, who was a CNA for 40 years and died without a pension. News outlets started covering the grassroots campaign, not as a reaction to the Winslow failure, but as its own living, breathing movement. People weren't donating out of pity. They were investing in vindication. Monica called the first meeting of the Reeves Fund from her living room, using folding chairs, and donated coffee. Around her sat 8 Black women, students, nurses, midwives, educators, each with a story, each with a scar, and none of them interested in being anybody's symbol. They built the framework together. Full tuition scholarships for Black women in nursing or pre-med, emergency grants for students on the verge of dropping out, mentorship programs, pairing working Black nurses with students, a speaker series about institutional racism and healthcare, built not for white guilt, but for Black truth. The launch felt like more than a project. It felt like repair. Like building a bridge no institution had ever cared to construct. Graham never contacted her about the fund. Not directly, but Monica heard whispers. He'd stepped down from 2 boards. Transferred a chunk of his wealth into a foundation. Someone said he was in Africa. Others said he was quietly funding health clinics in Mississippi under aliases. No confirmation ever came. Monica didn't ask for any. But the initials from that anonymous $2 million transfer JW didn't sit with her the way she expected. She assumed it was Graham. Until Jalen spoke up. I think it's not him, he said one night, sitting across from her. Why do you say that? Jalen hesitated, then pulled out his phone, opened an email. The message was from a law office. The sender? Jocelyn Winslow, Graham's ex-wife. The subject? Let's talk about building something bigger. Attached was a proposal. Private funding. Discreet support. No branding. No names. Just investment into something Jocelyn believed in, because she too had seen how power moved, and how silence was preserved. I think it was her, Jalen said. I think she's the one who saw you, after everything. Monica leaned back, stunned. She remembered the woman at her door weeks ago, the quiet, composed urgency in her voice. The apology unspoken, but deeply felt. I don't care who it came from, Monica finally said, as long as it helps someone stand. By the time fall enrollment rolled around, the Reeves Fund had dispersed over 60 microgrants to students in 8 different states. Monica traveled to Alabama for the first recipient ceremony, held at a rural community college just 10 minutes from where she was born. The room was humble. Plastic chairs, paper programs, a sheet cake from the local grocery store. But when she stepped to the podium, her voice was clear. Someone once told me I didn't belong in the room, that I should be grateful just to clean it, she said. So I built my own room. And the applause shook the walls. On the way back from the ceremony, as they crossed into Georgia, Jalen's phone rang. He glanced at the number. Unfamiliar. Then answered. His face changed as he listened. First stunned, then speechless. He hung up and turned to his mother, eyes wide. "What is it?" she asked. "It's Stanford," he said, barely believing it himself. "They want to fund my research. Fully. Full lab. Full team. They said they saw the press. But what convinced them was the proposal I submitted. Year ago. They pulled it back up." Monica smiled. Gently. "They finally saw you," she said. "No," Jalen replied, shaking his head. "They saw you. And because of that, they listened to me." The car rode quiet for a while, both of them staring out the window, passing fields of tall grass. For the first time in years, Monica didn't feel heavy. She felt planted, like something was finally growing. Just as they reached the next town, Monica's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown sender. Attached a video. She tapped play. It was a recording from inside the Winslow estate. The red study. Graham sat alone, talking to someone off-screen. "Do you think she'll ever forgive me?" he asked. A quiet voice replied. "She already has. She just didn't give it to you." The lab wasn't much. Just a repurposed classroom inside Stanford's bioengineering wing. The floors were linoleum, the windows too small, and the lights flickered whenever someone plugged in too many devices. But to Jalen Reeves, it was everything. After years of being overlooked, dismissed, and patronized, he had a bench with his name on it. A project with backing. A prototype that could shift the future of preventative care in underfunded Black and brown communities. Jalen's invention was deceptively simple. A wearable patch that used biosensors to detect glucose spikes in real time and send alerts directly to smartphones, particularly useful for diabetic patients without regular access to hospital care. It cost under $15 to produce. His goal was to make it cost $5. It had been rejected by every major firm he pitched it to a year ago. Now, after Monica's story exploded, after the Reeves Fund launched, after hundreds of young Black women wrote in with stories of their own, his proposal was taken seriously, because now they were listening. One afternoon, after a long coding session, Jalen stepped out for air and checked his voicemail. There it was, a number he hadn't seen in months. Graham Winslow III. He hadn't spoken to Graham since Monica's televised interview. Not directly, not even after the board rejection. But the message was unmistakably personal. "Jalen. It's Graham. I've read about your project. Your work deserves scale.
Reach.
I'd like to meet, privately, and talk about what it would take to invest. I believe in what you're building. I believe it's time." Jalen held the phone in his hand for a long time. He wasn't angry. He was just aware of what this meant, and what it didn't. The billionaire who once couldn't remember his mother's name, now wanted to attach his to her son's vision. He brought it to Monica that night. Sitting across from her with the same quiet restraint she had once shown him when he failed his first physics exam. "He wants in," Jalen said. "Money. Manufacturing. Distribution." Monica stirred her tea slowly. "And what do you want?" Jalen paused. "I want this device in hands that need it. Fast. I want insulin users in rural clinics to feel like they matter. I want to build something that lasts." "Then what's the price?" she asked. He looked away. "That's the part I don't know yet." Monica set down her spoon. Her voice was soft, but filled with steel. "Let me remind you of something," she said. "He didn't come to you when your application was buried. He didn't come when your prototype was laughed out of rooms. He's coming now, when your story's worth something." Jalen nodded slowly. "But we could use the help. Help doesn't come with strings. Saviors do." They sat in silence, two people who had built so much out of so little, now standing at the crossroads between legacy and leverage. "I'm not saying you can't take the money," Monica said, "but if you do, make sure you still own your name when it's over." The next week, Jalen agreed to meet Graham. They sat in a quiet cafe outside of Palo Alto. No entourage, no cameras. Graham looked older. Not by age, but by recognition. Like the truth had finally weighed down his frame. Jalen presented the prototype. Graham listened intently. For once. "This could save lives," he said, impressed. Jalen nodded. "That's the point. I can fund the whole thing," Graham said. "Full scale. Manufacturing overseas. Licensing. Clinical trials. We'll get it in every underfunded clinic in the country." Jalen didn't flinch. "And what would you want in return?" Graham looked confused. "A small stake. Brand presence. My team would handle the logistics. Jalen leaned back. So my mother saves your life, and your name goes on my work. Graham's face tightened. That's not what I meant. Jalen's voice didn't rise. But it hit like a hammer. She raised me on scraps. Cleaned the baseboards of your house. Watched you throw away more money in a year than we made in a decade. And you never saw her. Not until the world forced you to. Graham opened his mouth, then shut it again. We don't need saviors, Jalen said. We need listeners. We need people who believe in us when we're still invisible. He stood up, calmly sliding his prototype back into his case. I don't need your name on my future, he said. I just need mine to mean something. Graham didn't follow him out.
The story of the offer and the refusal leaked within 48 hours.
It was Jalen who confirmed it publicly. He tweeted a single sentence. My mother didn't sell her silence. I won't sell her story. That tweet crossed 1 million likes within 48 hours. He was offered 3 more grants by independent institutions. A partnership with a Black-owned health tech company. A TED Talk invitation. Not because he was Monica's son, but because he carried her fire. Meanwhile, Graham Winslow disappeared. No more interviews. No foundation updates. No new projects. He stepped down from his company's advisory board. Sold the Napa estate. Was last seen boarding a private jet. Destination unknown. Some speculated he went to Africa. Others said he was funding grassroots projects in secret. Some said he checked himself into a silent retreat, but no confirmation ever came. Only rumors. And a silence that, this time, didn't feel strategic. It felt earned. One day, months later, Monica stood in a small community clinic in Oakland, where the first batch of Jalen's devices were being distributed. She watched a nurse, black, young, determined, teach an elderly diabetic patient how to use the patch. The woman turned to Monica and smiled. My daughter got a scholarship through your fund, she said. She starts nursing school in the fall. Monica smiled back, quiet and proud, and she turned to leave. On the wall near the door hung a photo of her and Jalen, framed beneath a quote from her interview. You wanted to find a savior, but you couldn't see a servant. As she stepped outside into the fading light, her phone buzzed. It was a message from a private number, a single sentence. There's one more thing you need to see. Attached was a document, a legal deed transfer, property. She opened the file. It was the deed to the Napa estate, signed over to the Reeves Fund. The new building stood tall on the corner of East 83rd and Willow, where a liquor store used to sit beside a boarded-up barber shop. Now, sunlight gleamed off clean glass windows and slate-gray siding. Inside, the smell of fresh paint still lingered, mingling with sage and lavender from the community blessing held just 2 nights before. The brass sign near the entrance read, The Reeves Community Health and Justice Center, funded by the people, run by the people, for the people. Monica stood in the atrium, watching the last few workers install light fixtures above the reception desk. A nurse in training from the first cohort of the Reeves Fund wheeled a supply cart past her, smiling. She passed posters lining the walls, informational pamphlets, outreach ads in Spanish and Swahili, and a framed newspaper clipping of the scholarship launch. A photo of Monica sat in a corner of the lobby wall, humble and black and white. Next to it, someone had etched a quote from her TV interview into the glass. You wanted to find a savior, but you couldn't see a servant. This place had once been a fantasy. Now it was a movement with walls. Jalen had helped design the facility himself. Open concept care rooms, solar panel roofing, multi-use classrooms. Monica's vision had always been holistic. Healing wasn't just about checkups. It was about justice. About people being able to walk into a building and not feel small. Outside, a line had already formed: uninsured parents, elders needing diabetes check-ins, young mothers asking about prenatal visits. Monica stepped outside, the morning air cool on her skin, and took it all in with quiet grace. 12 years ago, she'd cleaned luxury countertops for the man who'd once overdosed on the floor of a clinic. Now she owned a clinic, one built on truth. Later that week, as she sat at her desk reviewing grant applications for the fund's next cycle, her assistant knocked lightly and entered with a curious look.
There's a package, she said. No return address, no name.
Monica raised an eyebrow. Leave it there. The box was matte black, unmarked. Inside, layers of fine parchment held a smaller envelope and a folded document. The check merely slipped from her fingers. Amount $35,000. Made payable to the Reeves Fund for Black Healthcare Equity. Bank, Coastal Private Trust. Signature. Unreadable initials. She swallowed hard. Her hands trembled slightly, not from greed or excitement, but the sheer scale. This wasn't a donation, it was a turning point. Enough to fund a decade of scholarships. 3 more clinics. A training institute. A research lab. A letter rested underneath the check, handwritten in slanted, deliberate cursive. Monica, you saw me when I didn't see you. And still, you gave. Without conditions. Without expectation. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I hope this helps others be seen. Use it the way you used your silence. With power. No interviews. No names. Just legacy. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply sat with the weight of it. The final gesture of a man who had finally understood that redemption was not something you declared. It was something you gave without needing to be seen doing it. Graham Winslow III never appeared in the press again. Not at the news center's launch. Not in any op-eds or interviews. His social accounts were deactivated. His company, now publicly managed, had issued a quiet memo stating his departure was final and philanthropic. No confirmation ever came about the donation. No one tried to claim credit. But Monica knew. The signature had been reduced to a whisper. A ghost in ink. And that was exactly how he meant it to be. A month after the funds were deposited, Monica stood at the front of the new clinic for its grand opening ceremony. Children played near the steps. Community leaders gave short speeches. Alumni from the Reeves Fund stood in white coats, holding candles in honor of Black women in healthcare who had come before them and been forgotten. Monica took no spotlight. No podium. She stayed in the background, the way she had lived most of her life. Until someone called her forward. A student she mentored, soft-spoken and bright, took her hand. "You built this," she said. "You deserve to see it from the front." Monica stepped to the microphone, eyes scanning the crowd. She didn't prepare remarks. She just breathed. Then said, "This isn't about a check or a building. It's about belief. Belief that we were never broken, only buried. And belief that when you choose to see people, they will rise." Silence followed. Then thunderous applause. After the ceremony, Monica walked the halls alone, visiting each room, touching the walls lightly, tracing a legacy not built from fame, but from choosing to stay when walking away would have been easier. Near the north exit, a new display had been installed without her knowledge. A single photo, framed in walnut, with no caption. It was a candid shot of Monica, seated in her former staff quarters years ago, folding laundry. Her head was tilted down, her hands steady, her face half lit by a lamp. Above the photo, etched in glass, was one word. Seen. As Monica stood in front of the image, Jalen approached behind her, holding his phone. "You're going to want to sit for this," he said. She turned slowly. Heart still. He showed her the screen. It was an alert from a trusted legal source. Subject line: Winslow name removed from National Institute of Health wing. New dedication honors Monica Reeves. She blinked. "By whose request?" she asked. Jalen scrolled to the bottom. It read simply, "At the donor's insistence." And beneath that, "Request fulfilled." The smell of antiseptic always brought Monica back. It wasn't unpleasant, more of a memory trigger. A sharp, clean reminder of where she'd come from. The scent was different here though, mingled with soft citrus oils and freshly brewed coffee from the student lounge. The new training wing at the Reeves Community Health and Justice Center had been open for just 4 months. Bright walls painted in earth tones. Artwork from Black and Indigenous artists adorned the halls. Natural light spilled through wide windows, as if the building itself was designed to reject secrecy. In a second-floor classroom, Monica stood in front of 15 future nurses, mostly Black women, some older than others, some single mothers, a few fresh out of high school, all of them quiet now, as she paced the front of the room. She didn't use a PowerPoint. She didn't need to. "What do you think the most dangerous thing is in a hospital?" she asked. A few guesses: cross-contamination, understaffing, bad protocols. She nodded, then answered, "Invisibility." The room stilled. When someone isn't seen, when they're spoken over, dismissed, or judged before they say a word, you miss what could save them. You treat symptoms, not people. She paused, letting it land. Most of you know what it's like to not be seen. That means you already carry what some nurses never learn in a lifetime. Compassion with teeth. Awareness sharpened by survival. That's not weakness. That's power. The students looked at her with awe, not the kind that idolized, but the kind that understood. She didn't stand before them as a hero. She stood as proof. Later that day, Monica stood in the back of the center's small auditorium. A white screen displayed Jalen's face, via live stream from a tech conference in South Korea. He was mid-presentation, pacing a sleek stage, sleeves rolled up. His medical patch prototype had gone global. Now used in over 40 clinics across 5 countries, his slides clicked behind him. Graphs, case studies, testimonies, but it was his voice that carried the weight. "I didn't build this out of brilliance," he said. "I built it because I watched my mother survive systems meant to silence her. I built it because healthcare should start with who's missing from the table." Applause rippled across the screen. Monica didn't clap. She pressed one hand to her heart and closed her eyes for a brief second. After the stream ended, the center's graduation ceremony began. Dozens of students, recipients of the Reeves Fund, walked across the stage in white coats. Their names were read out loud. Their families cheered. Some cried. And Monica stood just off stage, handing out envelopes of grant funding, hugging each one like they were her own. Because in a way they were. She had become the bridge she once prayed someone else would build. That evening, Monica returned to her office, the same one she'd furnished herself. There were no plaques, no ego-shining photos, just plants, books, and a framed quote behind her desk. "We don't need saviors. We need listeners." She sat finally alone, letting the silence settle. So much had changed. And yet she still carried that girl inside her, the one whose fingers trembled in the detox room, singing to a man who didn't even know her name. She had saved him. But she had saved herself by surviving. Her silence had once been a shield. Now, her voice was a torch. She clicked open an email, a draft of her upcoming keynote address for the National Healthcare Equity Summit. She had been chosen to speak not as a case study, but as a change agent. The speech would focus on institutional bias, quiet resistance, and the power of naming what is erased. But she deleted the first 3 paragraphs of the draft. Too clean. Too safe. She began again. "I was never invisible. I was ignored." A knock at her door. One of the new interns stood there. Young, probably just 20, nervous. "Sorry to interrupt," she said. "I'm doing my placement and intake next week, and I was wondering if I could ask you something." Monica nodded. "Come in." The girl stepped inside, glanced at the photos on the wall, then looked back at her. "Did you ever get to thank him?" she asked. "The man you saved?" The question sat in the air like incense. Monica didn't answer immediately. She looked out the window where the sun had begun to set over the city, casting gold over the rooftop garden below. She thought of Graham Winslow, not as a billionaire or a scandal or a headline, but as a man who had once been fragile, human, lost. She thought of all the versions of him in the world, people who walk past power every day and never recognize it because it isn't wrapped in wealth or whiteness. She turned back to the girl and smiled. Not a smile of triumph, a smile of clarity. "I never needed to," she said. "Some things are louder than gratitude." Final montage. Monica standing with a group of new nurses under a banner that reads, "We see each other." Jalen unveiling a new lab in Nairobi, with a plaque that reads, "Founded in memory of those never named." The Red Study now converted into a reading room at the Reeves Center, with Monica's photo and a wall of quotes from Black healthcare pioneers. Monica walking alone through the halls one night, lights dim, her steps slow, pausing to adjust a frame on the wall. Final reflection. She had never needed to be found. She just needed to be seen. And now, everywhere she looked, she was. As Monica turned off the last light in the hallway, her phone buzzed. A new message. No subject. No signature. Just a photo of a candle burning on a windowsill. And a voice message attached. His voice. Older now. Fainter. Singing the hymn. "Lord, keep me day by day." If this story made you stop and think about who gets seen and who gets silenced, don't let it end here. Every name erased deserves to be remembered. Every voice ignored deserves to be heard. Type yes if you believe in dignity over silence. Subscribe if this broke your heart.